If you work in utility safety or ops, you know the landscape changes fast. New safety solutions, updated grounding procedures, and the constant push for better leadership. It's a lot to keep up with. That's where Incident Prevention Magazine comes in. We are the industry's go-to source for real-world safety solutions. From in-depth articles on arc flash protection to ready-to-use tailgate topics for your crew, IP gives you the knowledge, insight, and strategy you need to get everyone home safe. Don't just react to the job, stay ahead of it. Subscribe today at incidentprevention.com. That's incidentprevention.com.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Incident Prevention's Utility Safety Podcast. I'm Kate Wade, the editor of Incident Prevention Magazine, and your host for this episode. Today, I'm sitting down with Tim Bedford, a retired lineman who served Pacific Gas and Electric for 36 years before recently taking on the role of Principal Customer Success Manager for San Francisco-based Gridware, the pioneers of active grid response, which is a solution the company calls, quote, a new category of grid intelligence that brings real-time visibility to the physical, electrical, and environmental conditions of every span of the electrical grid, unquote. In this episode, Tim and I will chat about his time in the field with PG&E, what drew him out of retirement to put his expertise to work for Gridware, and how that technology is helping utilities better protect the workforce. So now, without further ado, I'd like to officially welcome Tim to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Kate. Glad to be here.
Good morning. So thank you for being with us all the way from California. Appreciate you being up and Adam early. And I'm hoping to kick things off that you can tell us a little about yourself, your professional background, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, gladly. I am a second generation lineman, actually, that worked at PG&E, like you said, for 36 years. During that career, working at PG&E, great company, offered me lots of great opportunities. And I held many positions from lineman, supervisor, superintendent, manager, senior manager, rotations as director and leading projects, things like that. Also was a big part of the incident command system at PG&E, and ultimately retired in the wildfire organization as a principal program manager on the operations side. So had a lot of different experiences in many departments, including the restoration department, the control centers, quality, safety, work procedures. All those different things gave me a vast understanding of the utility industry and processes in the background. So being able to bring that forward and now come to Gridware to help move this great technology forward is pretty awesome.
Well, it's interesting because you clearly worked for PG&E for a long time. It looks like you retired, and if my math is mathing, based on your background, I saw that you were retired for about maybe a month before going to work for Gridware. So I was curious if that was like a planned thing, like you were just taking the month off and you knew you were going there, or if it was sort of an opportunity that came up unexpectedly.
Well, so it was always a plan when I got to that marker, no penalty retirement. That's something we all dream of, right? So I've been thinking about that for years. It wasn't a plan to necessarily go back to work in 1 month, right? I did have thoughts that I would be going back to work and doing something. But if you'd asked me before I retired and what my plan was, it wouldn't be I was going to go back to work in 1 month. The thing that really helped me or pushed me forward with that was really my excitement around the product and the impact I felt that I could have to potentially life-saving stuff, right? I've been part of things like the Santa Rosa wildfires, 2017 as deputy incident commander, heartbreaking. All different kinds of employees and injuries and different things that I've seen in my career, and really see this as something that can really impact the industry and my fellow linemen. So when this opportunity came up, and I had a few things that I was looking at, this one definitely excited me and wanted to take advantage of it, and I felt like the timing was important to just jump right back in.
Nice. Well, I want to back up a little bit so that you can kind of, tell our listeners what is Gridware do? Like, what do they do? What kind of problems do they solve for their customers or clients? And talk to us about like the active grid response.
Yeah, so first I'd like to start with like hazard awareness delay. So, and what that is the time in which something occurs on the system to when the utility becomes aware of it, right? So you have this period of time that until you either have an outage or get somebody out there to understand what happened, you have a delay there in understanding. We'll jump into active grid response a little bit more, but I want to hit on that a little bit before we do.
Sure.
So if you can think about the system as kind of like something that we can monitor with mechanical sensing at all times, real time, and be able to understand all the interactions that are happening out there, a branch hitting the line, a bird interaction, all these different things. And now you bring in Gridscope, right? And Gridware. The device is a device loaded with sensors that will be able to tell if the pole angle changed, the vibration on the conductors, sound, IR capabilities, some weather capabilities. Is just really impressive to really think about being able to pinpoint the exact location of a problem and go right to it. And in a lot of cases, even know what the interaction was and potential level of damage. So like if you see pole angle changed by, 60%, pretty good clue the pole's broken. Sounds, car pole, trees. We hear trees cracking and falling into the line. It's really giving you intelligence before you even head out to the outage to try to find the problem. When you think about historically in this industry and anything electrical, you go to where's the power start the outage, right? And you start testing or looking from there to try to find the problem. Now, instead of, not knowing where the problem is, you know where that problem is. So now when you think about hazard awareness delay, right? Instead of waiting for an outage to occur, maybe now you're able to, not maybe, I've seen it happen. You're hearing about things that are happening on the system, and before they progress and become an outage, you're able to actually respond, react, even prevent wildfires. We've identified things like trees smoking in the line when the troublemen showed up in high fire threat conditions, right? We all know it's only a matter of time before that tree would potentially ignite and what could happen. So this really, when you think about what does this do, it changes the game. With giving you that exact location of where your problem is. And the other thing that was really important to me and that I really jumped on as a lineman was the safety aspect. Because I've been that guy out there running around in the dark by myself in a truck, narrow driveways, lock gates, angry customers, all that stuff. And if I don't got to go to places that I don't need to go to and just eliminate all those exposures, rough terrain, all that kind of stuff, and go right to the problem, that's a big deal for employees and employee safety. A lot of times it's pretty easy to find a problem. It's right on the road, it's right there at the device, whatever. But when it's not, it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It could be pretty rough at times. And there's a lot of exposures out there to those employees that we're actually helping eliminate by being able to provide the exact location.
Well, and I'm curious about, I want to ask you some of the technical questions because I love what this sounds like. I'm curious in practice how, like, let's say PG&E, they have a tremendous service area. It's a very large area. And how do these scopes, how many have to be in a service area? I'm trying to picture them in my mind, and I'm like, how much surface area does one scope cover? Like, how is it functionally happening?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. I'm going to start with how the coverage works. So basically, we install on every other pole, and what you need to do is install in like a protection zone. Now that could be from, say, an LR to an LR, line reclosure to line reclosure. It could be from a fuse to the end of the line. But what you don't want to do is do partial coverage and protection zones, because when that unknown outage happens, let's say something happens and Gridware doesn't pick it up, and you got part of that area is not covered. Now you're kind of like, okay, the troubleman goes out and does his patrol, comes back, I didn't find anything. Okay, what really happened, right? So to get the full coverage and intelligence, you need to install every other pole. You need to be on all operating equipment like fuses, reclosures, sectionalizing devices, things like that, and really be able to monitor. Now, how that works, if you think about the system as like a guitar, right? And the conductors are the strings, and the frets are the poles or the cross arms, and then you got the pickups are the Gridscope. Okay, so when you think about that pole in the middle, when we say we install on every other pole, it is literally covered. We call them buddy poles because they're covered by the adjacent devices. So that conductor is going to move on either side of that pole, which is then associated to a Gridscope on either side. So therefore, we're able to monitor all the poles by installing on every other. And when I say monitor, the spans would probably be the better word. You're going to see the vibration, conductor movement, all those things, and that even the sound, they're very, very sensitive. So that's kind of the installation approach. From a use case point of view, there's a few. What is your driver as a utility? We started obviously in the wildfire space with the things going on in California and other places. But when you really think about, okay, employee safety, I'm gonna go back there. You're gonna hear me hit on that a lot because
Well, thank God, because that's what we do.
I was like the safety guy all the way through my career, very focused on that. So, there's the employee safety aspect, there's the customer minutes, there's the hazard identification before there's interaction with the public or problem like a wildfire. There's all these things, and there's multiple use cases, right? So, is it Katie? Is it Sadie? Is it Safety? Are you trying to drive metrics? We can touch on all those different things and look for those circuits where you're having the greatest impact to try to reduce risk, right? From the fire standpoint, maybe if you're taking the wildfire approach, or your long duration outages, if you're trying to impact that outage duration. And then obviously from, different things, unknown outages. I think that's going to become more and more of an issue in the industry. If you can address your unknown, maybe you could prevent the future, right? So there's a lot of different use cases, and a lot of it depends on what's the driver for the utility. And then, don't forget customer. Customer sat is huge in this industry right now, right? We know that's became more and more the visibility in the world, and the quickness in which customers can post, complain, and share their frustration, right? So if you could start reducing number of outages, reducing duration of outages, those kind of things, it is going to improve that customer satisfaction, especially in those places that utilities may be struggling.
I'm curious, what is like the installation time? Just for people who are interested in the product, if you were to go into their company, and I know it's based on how many poles they have and all that kind of stuff, but what's, a kind of a general average, would you say?
That's pretty incredible, right? So, might be able to see, I got one right here, right? That's it. That's device. It's about the size of a shoebox, weighs about 3.5 pounds, and installs in less than 5 minutes. It takes 4 1/4-inch lags, can be installed. Generally, you're going to install above the comms level and below the voltage, right? Or distribution level. And hit the power button. We got application that will sync it up and tie it into our system and start monitoring. On average, a crew can install upwards of 50 devices a day, right? When you're thinking about 5 minutes of install, travel time, movement, reset up, all the good stuff that has to happen. But depending on access, if you're sitting at a lock gate every time you go to do something, obviously that'll extend it. But if you've got open range and go, you could really be moving on that installation.
And so is it something that like the actual utility, like their employees themselves can install, or do you guys from Gridware go to their site and do the installation?
So there's a variety of ways that could happen, and we actually are doing all of them. So yeah, the utility can do it with their internal personnel, or the utility could subcontract it out themselves to have a contractor do it for them, which is kind of the same. Or there's some cases where we will hire the subcontractor to do the installation and include that as part of the cost for the product and those kind of things. So it drives that cost model a little bit different, and gives utilities the option of how they would like to have it done.
Mhm. Very cool. So you guys have obviously done field testing and, have user experiences. Can you tell me what some of the feedback has been like? Good feedback, and also maybe, if there have been any pain points or, any struggles for people, or for your company as you've kind of moved forward.
Yeah, I first would like to touch on where'd it come from, right?
Yeah.
So our CEO is actually a lineman from Australia that experienced the fires there. He came to the States and went to UC Berkeley. That's where he came up with this idea and strategy around mechanical sensing on utility lines because of the fires he experienced there and what he was seeing in California, obviously. So with that, as he pushed forward, and even on the UC Berkeley campus, he built a little mini power line with a couple of 55-foot poles, 200-foot span, a pad mount transformer, and energized it and started doing testing, thousands of hours worth of testing, to develop and learn and progress with this idea that he had. Once that was ready, he obviously went to try to find funding, and was took a while, but he got to where he was able to start approaching utilities. And I think back to like 2023 when I first was asked to engage with this while I was at PG&E. I think, they had, 12, 14 employees, very small amount of devices deployed, and PG&E in the wildfire space, we were really looking to take steps forward, right? So, this is one of the things that my VP asked me to look at, and I'm going to be honest with you. I was like, yeah, I'm not buying it. I'll probably be able to fail that pretty quick. Well, that was the saying, right? Fail fast. Fail fast. If you're gonna fail, fail fast. And so I was thinking we were gonna fail fast on that one, and so we started out with a very small deployment, which was a big deployment for them at the time of 450 devices, and I really took the approach of all their things they said they could do, like operate without cell signal, animal interactions, vegetation. So I really identified in the PG&E system those situations and likelihoods to put it to the test. And this is where some of the learning started to come in that I shared with you already about, partial deployments where you're only doing like a part of a protection zone. There was many outages where it was like, I'm here and I'm trying to fail it because I think it's going to fail, right? And Gridscope tells me nothing, and the troubleman tells me nothing, right? That he didn't find anything or she didn't find anything. And I'm going, okay, so did the Gridscope do its device? I couldn't say yes or no, right? So then that's when I started seeing some things happening, like planned work, stuff like that they were telling me about. And I was like, huh, you know what? They are seeing what at locations where stuff's happening. So I basically had to do a report out, and I said, I really don't have enough data. I need to fill these zones to be able to do a further review of this. And that's what we did. As that happened is when I became really excited. At this point, the data's just coming to me, right? And I'm looking for it didn't work. Let's move on. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to get this to my lineman buddies because this is going to change their life, change their world, and get them the information they need. I can't keep this to myself. So I literally connected with our dispatch team and started sharing the information. And really looking forward there is when great things started happening. Right.
I'm getting chills listening to you talk about this because I sort of had the same thing when I was starting to read about it. I was like, really? I'm like, really? This is like a thing that.
Oh yeah. No, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit cynical, because you
Yeah.
you got to be like that sometimes and be like, really? So that is fascinating, and thank you for sharing that because I think, many of us have that. It's like everybody wants to sell us something these days. How do you tell what's real versus what isn't? And I'm assuming, like, if people wanted data of some kind, that you guys have that you could share with them as they're making purchasing decisions and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We are gathering and developing more. I mean, we have gotten to where we're deployed in pretty high volumes, 10x increase over the last year. Companies like PG&E, Excel, Puget, CPI, others. Hopefully, I'm not forgetting some that want to be mentioned. But yeah, no, we definitely have a lot to share now, and really taking steps forward and working with a lot of utilities.
Well, so and here's the big question. Technology, always comes at a cost. Um, and so a lot of people's budgets are tight. They just don't know what they can afford and things like that. If somebody comes to you and they're interested in the product, but they're not sure that, it's affordable for them, what's the conversation like from your perspective?
With my background, I'm very familiar with this issue of funding and how you're going to pay for it, right? Like you said, nothing's free. There's definitely a cost, and generally in the utility industry, at the point in the times we are, you're going to need to identify something to either replace or reduce cost in that bucket of money, right? Um, so there are definitely some things, and we could work with the utility, and a lot of that has to do with what's your use case, right? And how that aligns to where, they're gonna look to get the money based on use case. But it's gonna require this is a different way of thinking, and it's gonna require a different way of thinking on the utility side too. So you think about, and we talked about it, improve customer satisfaction. Okay. Well, that's generally a budget and advertising and different approaches, that improve the website and accessibility, all the different things that go on that we try to improve customer sat. But how about no more outages and they just see a marked change? I think that's going to have an impact. Employee safety. That's a big deal. Is that a budgeted item that you take money from safety? Well, no, you don't want to do that, but it's going to have an impact, right? What about reliability? Okay, now we're talking. Okay, things that jumped out to me and I was looking for because I was struggling with that on in my role in the utility of okay, I got to find it because this is amazing, right? Well, prior to Gridscope, I actually led a fault indicator effort in the wildfire areas. And we spent quite a bit of money installing fault indicators, a blinky light, right? Right? That just tells you some way that way there is a problem, right? It could be 10 miles. You don't know, right? So the difference to a grid scope now is like a fault indicator on steroids, right? It's telling you the exact location, giving you better information. So I need those fault indicators anymore. Maybe that's an opportunity. Reliability. What are you doing to reduce your KD, SAIDI, SAFE minutes? Where are you spending those dollars? And has that been proven? And is there an opportunity in that budget? Are you installing more sectionalizing devices to try to reduce customer impact? What are you doing? And there's like all these different buckets because this does affect so many different things that the utility can look at. I think most importantly though is going to be that use case. What's your driver? And that needs to probably align to where you're going to look for that. Now, with that, these are the things that become a little bit harder, right? What was the cost of the Palisades, right? If you can prevent those kind of things, right? That's not a budgeted item, but you can actually prevent catastrophic type events potentially that could be very, very high cost. And this is a way to build that into your risk management system. So usually you have a little bit more proactive money on that side if you're trying to develop new things and do different things. So I don't know that I hit it with one straight answer, but it just goes to show that it really is far reaching in what my experience has been and touches a lot of different pieces and parts of the utility industry. Yeah. And how can you really work within your utility to find that money to have the impact you're looking for?
Well, and it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you can kind of scale it too. Like you can decide where your protection zones are. So even if your service area is X number of, square miles, if you just want to do one part, you would be able to do that part. And then if, as you get more budget money, could grow that. I would assume if that was an option or no.
No, it definitely is. So, looking at where we are in the industry, and obviously as a company, we want to move forward more to a product level device versus pilot level, right?
Yeah.
So while that is true, right? We are looking to be as aggressive as we can with utilities to have the impact that they need. So that the super small deployments, we definitely need to cover that protection zone. Can be done. But we're really looking to move ahead into, okay, we wanna be able to hit that metric and the item you're looking for fast and deploy at a little bit larger level, but it's never like we're going to come in and deploy to the entire system, right? It's gonna start somewhere, whether it's this entire circuit or something that you start with. You get your results and you make your decision. Hey, we need more of that, right? So that definitely is a way to go where you don't have to go to like super large. It could start out with, hey, we want to hit this problem area or this use case, like for PG&E and others, it was fire, right? Wildfire areas. And, what are you doing and what do you want to do?
Well, it sounds like it would even lower, some of the fleet costs. I know a lot of, because we also have a fleet publication, and a lot of fleet managers, they say lots of people complain about fleet because we're just a cost center. But it sounds like if you don't need to send people out all the time, that's fuel, that's engine hours, that's tires, things like that they could be also saving money on. So there's different, yeah, like you said, it nails kind of like every different department. There's something that can be said.
No, that actually, that's a great point. I had circuits at PG&E during EPSS fire season, sensitive setting time, that when there was an outage, it was so difficult, so large that it was like every time 5 troublemen, right? You dispatch 5 T-man because otherwise it's going to take forever because you got to look at 100% of the circuit during that high risk time, right? So now the exact location, you can dispatch 1, right? So that does tie into that fleet side of things, patrol time, resource management, overtime. It goes on and
It's like preventive maintenance in a way. It's like,
yeah. Oh no.
waiting out in front of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to speak to that a little bit as well because that's the next step of super excitement for me, on that preventative maintenance side. But we'll reapproach towards the end here.
Okay. Well, I'm just kind of looking at what we've covered here. Oh, one thing that I did also want to ask you about is, what about the reliable? So earlier you said, these scopes, they can work when you don't have cell phone service and things like that. Ho Do they ever go down? I mean, do they need to be replaced? Like, how do you know if something, is malfunctioning with the unit that is on the pole? What's that like?
Well, obviously it's technology, so just like your TV toaster, you can have issues, right? The way that it works is the device is actually communicating on frequency, that we're able to see, hey, it's still talking to us, it's still talking to us, so we know the device is working. And there's things that we've put in the background to monitor that, to be able to identify last gasp and different things like that, that will tell us, hey, whether, is this a failure of the device that needs to be addressed? By the way, we have a great warranty on the devices. And if we see that issue, we'll replace it at cost. The piece of, that device and replacing, so pole replacements, you can transfer it to the new pole. That's not an issue. Other things, wonderful customers with shotguns, blowing them off the pole. That may not be covered under the warranty side of things, but we're gonna see it. We'll work with the utility to get them replaced. The other thing that I do want to call out with that is, because of the redundancy of the devices, right? I said every other pole. We need that to get very specific to the location. But those poles beyond actually also see the signals. Okay. So even if, say, this device was offline, the adjacent devices are going to pick stuff up. Right. Mhm. So the redundancy is also a big piece of this that supports that while we're monitoring, identifying, addressing those kind of things.
Tim, this is so exciting. I'm like very excited about this. And I think it's going to be very well received by our audience. And they're going to be excited too. But before we kind of close things down, is there anything else that you want to mention or talk about, that you think our readers should know? Anything along those lines? Please feel free to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna come right back to safety, Kate. As a lineman, and the time I spent out there in the dark and all that kind of stuff, right? You look at our lineman resources out there and the hours they're spending, just searching for stuff in the most hazardous conditions. And if we can impact that and improve their safety by eliminating those exposures that are just unnecessary, reduce customer exposure to safety incidents. I had a point in time in my career where I was the CPUC investigative lead that would go escort the regulator up to fatalities and all that kind of stuff, right? It's just thinking about, hey, if I know that a wire is off an insulator and hanging low before a customer can contact it and save that interaction or life. These are just huge things. High risk stuff like fires, wildfires. This is industry changing stuff when you think about life and safety and that kind of stuff. Beyond the great impact this is providing to the industry on the ability to quickly restore power and know what's going on in their system, and be able to do great things. The other things I'd want to hit on is, think about a future state, right? We're making progress. We're actually testing and piloting with a couple utilities right now. A wire de-energizing before it even hits the ground, as soon as it breaks.
Wow.
Zero delay line break, right? We're developing nodes that are going in reclosures that are associated to the devices that we pick that signal up. It will operate that reclosure and de-energize that circuit. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So zero delay line break, and now start taking that further, right? Understanding when you want that reclosure to operate and how you can manage that different times of the year, whether it's fire season, not fire season, and how it coordinates with the sensors on the system, that you're able to better manage that. Getting to a confidence level with these devices that control centers can automatically see exactly where the problem is, isolate, restore customers that much faster. Things are just really gonna move forward fast. Real-time monitoring of our facilities, understanding what's the condition of the pole and being able to monitor that and see when conditions are changing as far as the integrity and the conductor positions, the conductor sags, things that we know, like, when I go back in my career and think about, there's a lot of 6 copper still out there that is annealed, right? As that conductor anneals, it stretches, it gets smaller, and it drops down. We're able to monitor that electromagnetic field and be able to see the changes that are happening and be able to identify, hey, something's going on here, right? These are all things that are progressing right now. It's really to that, where is it and what more than likely was it? But those next steps of this technology really excite me and I feel like are a game-changing piece. Think about storms. I've been the deputy incident operations commander in the EOC for PG&E during a large events, right? System level stuff. And here I am, I'm trying to manage the resources. Where do I need to move my crews to? Based on the weather, it says, put them here. But I can't tell you how many times in my career we put them there. That isn't where it hit. It was over there, right? So, being able to get maybe some high-level summary reports on amount of interaction locations with potential damage. Or here's the outages that look to be a line clearing contact. That's a fast restoration opportunity for you, utility. Really starting to give intel into understanding the level of impact. I can tell you through my career, one thing I figured out is the storm restoration is all dependent on the assessment up front. The faster you could do that and understand what you got and what you need, the faster you're going to be able to overcome and restore those customers. So if we're able to support that on the front end with really giving some understanding and where you need those resources, maybe level of damage, those kind of things that really can change how a utility manage even major events. So it's really exciting for me to think about with all the different things I've experienced in my career, to really have the opportunity to be part of something that can literally change this industry. And that's why I'm here. That's why I came back so quick from retirement and really jumped in to support this effort.
Well, Tim, I not only want to thank you for your time today, but also for all the work that you and your company are doing, to better protect the workforce. I cannot thank you enough for that. And I also want to note to our listeners that if you'd like to reach out to Tim, we've posted his contact information on our website at utilitysafety.podbean.com. And you can also visit the Gridware website at gridware.io. Until next time, stay safe and be well. The views, information, and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Utility Business Media and its employees. It is strongly recommended that you discuss any actions or policy changes with your company management prior to implementation.